All right, everybody, it's about 2 minutes after, so why don't we go ahead and get started. For those of you who may not have been around in one of my classes before, my name is Paul Yater. I'm the summer administrator for the Department of Community and Summer Education at Point Park. Again, we thank you for joining us today and also over the past 5 weeks. It's been a real joy to be able to share all these great enrichment webinars with you. Try to say that 5 times fast. It doesn't work out, as you can tell. I'm just going to go ahead immediately and hand it over to our guest for today, Kate Plows. I will let her tell you about herself and about what you're going to be experiencing today. But this is the last of our digital content areas. So Kate, thank you again for joining us, and it's all yours.
Yeah, happy to be here. So my name is Kate Plows. I'm currently a photography and visual communications teacher at Strathaven High School, which is just outside of Philadelphia, PA. In the past, in my past lives, I've taught ceramics. I've worked as a dorm mom. I was a journalism advisor, most notably for about 6 years, and that sort of took my career path on a different track. I think one of my fundamental beliefs now as an educator and as a person is that the stories that happen to young people and that happen particularly in schools, but that just happen to people who are still teenagers or young adults are incredibly impactful and deserve to be told. They deserve to be told. They deserve to be told in a whole bunch of different ways. But young people who are in here, please make some noise. I'll say that from the start here, and I'll echo it throughout the presentation. You are living through, kind of a weird chapter of our history in the United States right now, but also a historic chapter in the United States right now. And the media that you produce right now, video, photographs, stories in print, in web, the things that you produce to share parts of that story right now are going to end up being primary historical documents for a chapter of history that we've really never lived through as a country before. So I say it to my students a lot in a lot of different ways. The photos you take matter. The stories you write matter. The essays you share matter. The videos you produce, they matter a lot. I'm going to focus in today on one aspect of digital storytelling, photo essays. And I'll tell you right now that my bias, my lens, pun intended, coming to this is A, as a photography teacher, B, as a teacher. So I'm addressing this to young adults who might be producing media in a classroom environment or on your own. And C, I also have a journalistic bent on this. So although there's lots of different ways to share photographs online, in print, I'm looking at it through the lens of journalistic storytelling. If along the way you have questions, please ask Nick in the chat and he'll interrupt me, or we're a small enough group in here, you can unmute yourself and ask me at any point during the presentation. I'm totally okay with that. Also, rather than putting together a PowerPoint, this time I put together a website, a web page, and I'm going to share that page with Nick. You can probably also see it up in the toolbar of the website if you look, but I'll share that with Nick and he can share it with everybody who's in the group here at the end of the session, so that you can go back through here and click on the links. I tried to make this something that would be useful to you beyond the hour that we have together today, because an hour is nowhere near the time that we would need to be able to go through purpose, techniques, strategies, technology, everything that you would need to be able to produce a photo essay. So we're just going to overview very lightly here, and then some of the resources on this page will help you to go a little bit deeper if you want to go deeper later. Okay, so far so good? Give me a thumbs up if you know how to do that on Zoom. I don't see any faces, but I'm going to assume that you're all giving me a thumbs up right now. So, what is a photographic essay? It's a form of visual storytelling. It's a way to document an event or to present a narrative through a series of images. Photo essays have emotional impact. They should be able to create emotion and understanding with or without using words, but in student media, we definitely prefer the with. Last summer, I went out to Springfield, Missouri, and I spent a week at the Academy of Scholastic Broadcasting, which is a really quirky little place based out of a high school, taught by a veteran digital media and broadcasting teacher. And people come from all over the country. His line, and I don't know whether it was his or he stole it from someplace else, but Dave Davis repeated all week, "Take me somewhere I can't go, show me something I can't see." When we're choosing what we're going to make our photo essays about, we want to think about taking our viewer, taking our reader, someplace that they couldn't ordinarily go, showing them something they couldn't ordinarily see. And I put Sam's picture here because, okay, yeah, your high school probably has a marching band too, probably has a pep band that plays it at games. But where he took us that we couldn't ordinarily go is right over that trombonist's shoulder so that we could see things from her perspective, which is not a perspective that we might ordinarily see. Big difference between taking this picture from down in the stands looking up at the trombone player and taking it from her unique perspective. In photo essays, we make this choice to take people someplace that they can't show, show them something that they can't see, by considering composition, considering the novelty of our topics, and considering our strategies as narrators. We make decisions about the formats for our photo essays, print or web. We consider the purpose of our photo essays. Purposes that you might consider include event coverage, profiles, lists, and conceptual. And we make technical choices that will make our photo essays accessible to our audience. When you have this site for yourself, you can click on each one of these and it will take you to a section that sort of reviews each one of them. Also going to continue to add it to this over the next few days. I have to tell you that starting to build this out, the topic just snowballed, and there's more that I want to include on this page. So you'll see more than you see on screen today. So let's start by talking about composition. If you've taken a basic photography course, you know about composition rules. Composition strategies help photographers to frame their subjects in unique, unexpected, or just simply effective ways. Unique compositions help us to reconsider what might otherwise be ordinary. So I'm going to give you 7 composition tips that you can tuck in your pocket and just think about when you go out to shoot photos. It's amazing. I was just out shooting some photos the other night, and just out in a meadow and taking pictures of the plants and the sunset and all of that stuff. It's amazing how differently you see the world when you start to think about what can I show somebody that they wouldn't ordinarily see from their eye level. It forces me to crouch down. It forces me to stand up on top of a stump. It forces me to change the angle of my camera. It forces me to move around a little bit in some ways that I wouldn't be thinking about if I wasn't thinking about composition rules. So, rule of thirds. If you divide your picture into a tic-tac-toe board, your subject should not be located in the center square. Place your subject near one of the intersections of the lines. So, subject here. Can you see that pop-up photo in your frame? Hopefully you can. I'm never sure how much zoom will cover. Main subject of the photograph, these couples, this couple on stage in the theater, again framed near this top quadrant. Main subject framed here. Why? So I had heard the rule of thirds before I had started even exploring photography, but 2 reasons. One, it gives the viewer room to consider the environment, the place where the photo is being taken. 2, it also gives your subject visual room to move in the frame. This photograph of the tuba player would be a very different photo if it was cropped in right here with his head in the center. The way it's framed, you can almost envision his next gesture is going to be leaning forward and you can see where that would, his tuba would still fit in the frame. Repetition. Repetition of a form can add visual interest to images because it makes us pay attention to what's going to be different. Two or more subjects repeat to create a pattern, but sometimes that pattern is broken with a different object, and that's what calls our attention. So patterns stick with us in our memory. Repetition of the players, but what we notice is that some of them are in purple, some of them are in white. What we notice is some of their shoes are purple and some of them are black. We notice differences in a pattern, and that creates visual interest in our subject. Something to consider here is that these composition rules are not like entrees, they're ingredients. So I could say, well, this is a rule of thirds photograph because our main subject is right here in that top quadrant. It's also a repetition photograph for the way these three figures are repeated during their dance on stage. Again, anywhere you see a group of people together, you're going to find repetition. Anywhere you see shapes repeated, you're going to find repetition. And if we ever get back into our school buildings again, repetition is everywhere in schools. Angle. This is one of my favorites. So a worm's eye view. Funny, I was just about to like crouch down, but I realized you wouldn't be able to see me. And a worm's eye view is when you get down low and you take your photograph going up. A bird's eye view is when you get up high and you take your photograph going low. You change your angle or the viewpoint of your photograph, you automatically make your subject more interesting. We normally view things at whatever our eye level is. So you can add visual interest to your photograph by sort of confusing the viewer a little bit. Change up the angle and you make things that are everyday into something unexpected. So this was a worm's eye view. The photographer was down close to her feet to take this photograph. Again, a worm's eye view. So this is a photograph who is crouched down near the basketball hoop to be able to get this photograph of the student going up. Again, you know, I see a student playing guitar and my gut is just to take a photograph of the student playing the guitar. But what the photographer is really thinking here is, how can I accentuate the movement of her hand on the guitar? And so she got down low to take that photograph going up. When I start teaching angle, I can always anticipate getting a call from the assistant principal's office because he wants to know why my students are out in the hallway standing on benches and standing on desks to try to get a worm's eye view or a bird's eye view of their subjects. Strong subject. This is the classic portrait. This is a photograph where there's a strong dominant focal point that takes up almost the entire photograph. You want to try to keep your background simple to avoid the distractions. It basically puts us in the same immediate space with the subject. Simplify the background, only keep what's most important to the background. I thought it was important here that we see a little bit of him sanding down the desk that he was building. Framing. By the way, I should say all of the photographs that you see on this page are student work from the last year and a half. Framing, once you start thinking about framing, you'll see it everywhere. It's using the natural, the unstaged elements in your photograph to create a border or a frame around the subject of your photograph so your audience knows exactly what you're focusing in on. Once you start looking for natural frames, you will see them all the time. This student produced this as part of a photo essay he did about his family working from home. Same project. And probably some of you can relate to this photograph. Emma took this picture of herself looking in a mirror, which made a natural frame on her graduation day. Leading lines. Leading lines are visual elements that pull your viewer into the composition of your images. There's natural leading lines all over a school, a hallway, a fence, a row, stairs. but the direction that somebody is looking can also create a leading line in the photograph. So the direction of the lines pointing towards Abby's face and the direction that her eyes create in that same frame. Powerful leading lines focusing in on a subject. In this photograph, this was taken during those first couple of weeks of the pandemic when the shelves were empty in the grocery stores. And selective focus. If you haven't heard the phrase selective focus before, think iPhone portrait mode, right? It's that how you control the aperture, that's a whole other photography class, but how you control the aperture in your photograph to make one area of the photograph that's in sharp focus and the rest of the photograph blurred out. Creates a strong center of interest by making sure your desired subject is the only thing in focus and leaving some things about the background to our imagination. So normally we see dogs doing this, but her little brother likes to do this as well. I loved this photograph. I might have thought to make the sharp focus on Sabrina's face, but instead the photographer chose to make the sharp focus on the pattern on this glove, kind of to emphasize the mood and the feel of winter. You can do some pretty creative and artistic things with shallow depth of field. Okay, so 7 really easy composition tools that you can just tuck in your pocket to sort of change your strategies when you're going out and taking pictures in the field. Rule of thirds: repetition, angle, strong subject, framing, leading lines, selective focus. Okay, novelty. So you're doing a photo essay for publication. You want to think about the scenes or the situations that your viewers or your readers might not otherwise see. You need to know who your viewers or your readers, who your audience is going to be in order to think about the novelty. I know that school can seem pretty boring, or at least it seemed pretty boring back in January sometimes. But then everything in education got real novel beginning in March. And then it might have gotten boring again as we settled into the rhythm of whatever online learning became. You got to think about what the stories are that are unique to your community. What happens once or infrequently, and how can you prove that that thing happened to your readers, to your audience? You know, it's great to have stories. We like stories, we like reading stories. But the photos become the proof. They become that artifact of the situation actually happening. So I'm gonna touch a little bit later on, you guys can see this smoke in the water window, correct? Yes? All I see is blank screens with microphones turned off. But I'm gonna say that if somebody cannot see a big screen that says smoke in the water, okay, thumbs up. Thank you, Kathy Moran. So this is a publication out in California that when the campfire happened back in 2018, they did a photo essay about those campfires. And this is part of a bigger multimedia package that included some infographics and included, I think it even included a little bit of a video, some quotes from athletes, quotes from teachers, but then this amazing photo essay with quotes at the end. Let's hope that this school never has to experience fires threatening their community again. We can hope. But they have now a historical artifact of this once-in-a-lifetime situation happening through the photographs that they took and through the quotes that they collected to go with each one of these photographs. The platform here that they used is Adobe Spark, which is a really easy, user-friendly tool. I'll hit on it, I'll show you the website for it at the end. But if you've never used Spark before, it's one way to go from pretty much 0 to photo essay in a day. When I give my students instructions to do photo essays, I give them a one-page handout about how to get started with Adobe Spark, and they're often running with it without me having to do much further explanation on it at all. Protests don't happen every day, not even in 2020, but if and when they do happen around your school community, that is a novel situation. That's something that, you know, again, isn't happening every day. It's something that when you take your viewer to a protest through your photo essay, you're showing them something that they might not ordinarily see. So, there we go. What I loved about this one is that there is a caption for each one of the photographs, and there's also some really beautiful composition strategies that are used in these photographs. So this was a 2019, I think, on the climate change protests. I grabbed this one from Bearing News because Halloween is something that we think happens, I mean, of course, Halloween happens every year, right? But taking your viewers someplace that they can't go is, if you weren't in school, if you weren't in the school community on the day of Halloween, you didn't get to see the costumes. You didn't get to see how everybody celebrated it that year. It becomes something novel. It's also something that happens only once. I don't know very many students of any age who wear the same Halloween costume twice. So it really does become sort of a novel, unique situation. Makes for a great small photo essay. And again, what I loved about this one is how they captioned each one of their photographs. They got a quote from each person who they photographed for their Halloween costume. It really made it rich. I think when I was 3 when I watched Blue's Clues. I don't remember when I stopped or anything. I just can't remember. All I remember is having like a Blue's Clues cereal bowl. I mean, what a goofball. I love it. Okay, so novelty, looking for things that your viewer or your reader might not otherwise have access to seeing, or things that only happen once. Narrative. Okay, so I could do a whole couple of hours here on writing photo captions. Ain't nobody got time for that today. I've got, what, another 20 minutes here to talk. But I want to make sure that you have some resources to explore the formula for writing photo captions when you're ready to explore it. So build into the website. This is the slideshow that I use when I'm teaching caption writing to students. Caption writing is not anything mysterious. There is a caption is the block of text that goes along with the photograph, and there is a distinct formula to how to write it for publication. And you'll see if you look at national publications, you look at professional publications, most of them follow this same format for writing captions. Basically, it's 2 or 3 sentences. The first sentence is in present tense, and it tells you what's going on in the picture. The second sentence is in past tense, and it gives you some background information. And the third sentence is a quote from somebody who was involved in the photograph. Sentences 2 and 3 can be interchangeable. The little slideshow gives you some opportunities to practice doing that. Also linked here, there's a wonderful article from Lori Oglesby. It's kind of like a legend in the student journalism world for us. This is it's a PDF. The article's not online anywhere, but it's a great resource for considerations in writing your captions. She frames it with a really interesting personal story and an actual assignment on how to write captions, like a prompt that you can use, either students for practice on your own or teachers for practicing with students. I've used this one a bunch. Two examples here. So minimally, your captions need to include who's in the picture, right? So here, present tense. Junior Michael Kwango goes up for the rebound, sentence in present present tense. The Streaks defeated the Turner Abbey Knights 74-75. They play next at Fort Defiance on December 21st. So this doesn't follow that formula exactly, but it does for the first two sentences, present tense and then past tense. And it names the person who's primarily the subject of the photograph. As you get further into this photo album, all it does is name the player. Senior Joss Lichty drives to the paint. Paint. Senior Jakari Dieza goes up for a jumper. Fans celebrate after senior Christian Welker makes a half-court shot to end the first half. So you can see, like, at the start, it frames it all up, you know, where we are, who, what, when, where, why. But as they go through the album, it just proceeds to just identify the person who's in the photograph. And I have to tell you, when I look at photo essays, photo slideshows for publications that are published online, so many of them don't do this. They just put up an album of photos without any indication of who is in those photographs. Probably a better strategy, rather than putting up 100 photos for that basketball game, to narrow down that album to your 10 or 20 best photographs and put them up with a caption that names the people who are involved in each photograph. This is built, just jumping in here with a little bit of technology stuff. This is built on the SNO, School Newspapers Online platform, which is a really common platform for school newspapers online, for publication websites these days. But if you have a WordPress site, if you have a Wix site, a Weebly site, any one of those will allow you to put photo slideshows with captions in them. That's something that we don't have time to cover today, the nitty-gritty technique of how to do that. But if you decide, if you want to reach out to me, and I can coach you through most of them, how to do them. Once you do it once, or you have a managing editor for your publication or a web editor for your publication who knows how to do it, it's really not difficult to do. The captions in this photo slideshow, photo essay, are really important. Graduations this year were historic. They were done in ways that schools have never done graduations before. And each one of these captions tells part of the story of how this school did it. Although families could not get out of the car, they still showed their support and excitement through decorations, horns, and lots of cheering. Each student's family was required to wait in their car, and each student had to wait until it was safe for them to walk across the stage. As senior James Clifford waits for his turn, he's informed of what he's supposed to do once stepping onto the stage. So these captions are really important, because without those captions, we don't know the specific story of this graduation, which was different from any other graduation that this school has had before, and is probably different from how the school in the next district over did their graduation too. This is a really important storytelling aspect to this piece. So, just to recap, strategies that you might use for creating sort of a creative photo essay: composition, for taking great photographs; novelty, in choosing the topic for your photo essay. What's something that your viewers can't ordinarily see? What's something that's only happening once and that it's important to document with images? And narrative, your caption writing, the writing that goes along with the photographs to set them into context. Okay, let's talk about format. So, I mean, there's other formats besides print and web, but print and web are the two main formats that you would be considering as a student journalist, or as a publications advisor, or even as a teacher who's trying to coach your students to create photo essays in classes. My favorite place to look for great print photo essays is yearbook spreads. Honestly, the best yearbooks that are out there are putting a photo essay on each spread of their book. So this is a print photo essay about the robotics team that has photographs that are specifically captioned for each one, and that also tells the overall story of the season. Some incredibly creative photo essay spreads in yearbooks that are out there, and it's worth starting to create a collection for students to access and see when they're looking for ideas. The girls' basketball team, whatever Lion Palooza was, seemed to involve large Jenga blocks. What's great about these, though, is that I'm not going to zoom in here today, but you can read the captions for each one of these photographs, and you can see the connection between the words and the image. You can start to understand why they chose one photograph to be the largest photo on the page and other photographs to be the supplements to that. Photo essays in print for newspapers might not be quite as common in student journalism, but you can still find great examples in magazines. Time Magazine, The Atlantic, The New Yorker. You're going to find photo essays in a lot of magazine publications. There's a couple examples of photo essays from student newspapers that I'll show you here. Just a couple because, again, it's a little bit harder to dig for examples of those online because so many publications have moved to working on the web. This one is from The Remarker, which is an extraordinarily high school newspaper in Texas, outside of Dallas. It's an all-boys school. They literally publish about 60 or more pages a month. They don't have an online paper. They don't have a website. They just focus on the print edition, and it is exquisite. So this is just a one-page photo essay about an event that they did at their McDonald's to raise money for a homeless shelter. Zoomed in on one section of that page so that you can see that each one of these photographs has its own caption to tell the story of what's going on in this photograph. At my current school, Strathaven, I'm not the newspaper advisor, but I coach and I cheer them on as best as I can. I was so proud of this spread that they put together last year about the coffee house that the school does every year in the spring. Lots of photographs on this page, and each one of those photographs has its own caption to tell the specific story of what's happening in that photograph. You have to think about when you're putting print, you're putting newspaper photo essays together, you're sort of like a partner in that with the print quality of your publication. You know, if you're printing on newsprint, there's some things that you need to tweak with your colors in order to make sure that their colors are going to be vibrant. If you're printing a magazine, your publisher might have certain sets of criteria that they want for your images. To really work closely with your printer to make sure that you're going to get good quality. But I did put a link in here to the extent that the Remarker has a website. They have at least one photo essay in each issue of their paper. So you can go back through their archives and see there's some great examples for layout ideas, content ideas, theme ideas. This is a good one to look at for photo essay ideas. Okay, I'm watching my time here. If you're publishing a photo essay on your website, what I would urge you to do, I know there are standard templates to publish photo essays using WordPress, using Weebly, using SNO. What I would encourage you to do is to look at how the pros are doing it for inspiration. You might not know how to code things the way that this amazing photo essay coded the map and coded the animations. I mean, this is a whole professional team at the New York Times. But it can inspire you to think a little bit differently about how you might choose to publish your photo essay, set some goals for what you want to include. If you click on one link in this website, click on this link. What they did was, as the Black Lives Matter protests started to spread throughout the country, they reached out to the local publications that were covering them and basically put together this photo album, this photo essay that has photos pretty much from everywhere and links to stories about how all of those local publications covered the protest. I'd never seen anything quite like this before. You can see at the top, chronologically, May 27th, May 28th. But as you go down and further into this story, with each ensuing day, there's more photographs. The crowd sizes get bigger. You start to see the names of cities that you've never heard of before. There are so many photographs, and I'm thinking about redoing my own composition instruction this year just to use photographs from this one website. I'm going to scroll all the way to, because there's great examples for compositional tools for everything in this site. I'm going to scroll the whole way down to the bottom, even though it seems strange to go through these photos quickly. What I loved down here is at the very bottom, they put up this archive, like an index of links to all of the stories that they pulled from to collect these stories. So links to coverage in local publications all over the country. I right now live in Westchester, PA. So here's the link to the Westchester Black Lives Matter story and their photo album. And I had a chance through a program I was doing this summer to talk to the photo editor who was in charge of the story. They reached out to each one of these publications to get permission and linking rights to be able to link to all of their stories from all over the country. It was just an extraordinary, extraordinary piece. Some of you might have seen this. You know, if you're involved in student journalism or media work at the high school and middle school level, there's a lot of questions about this upcoming year. If your school is virtual, how are you going to collect photographs of student experience in the upcoming school year? It's a lot to think about right now. This piece was published in Time magazine, created by a Drexel University senior. Story about the class of 2020, the writing is great, the story itself is great. She had the cover photo for Time magazine. It's extraordinary. She's just a senior in college when she did this. But she functioned in putting this story together. She functioned as an art director. She coached her friends through setting up these photographs in their homes, using a smartphone, the video and her smartphone, FaceTiming them, to kind of set up the shot, teaching them how to use their smartphones as cameras. There's a whole feature on how she did it linked to the story. But you might think about something like this for a photo essay coverage at your school next year. How are people living their lives while they're at home? If you're on a hybrid model, how are people spending the days in school versus the days out of school? What do those morning health checks look like for the students in your school? What do extracurriculars look like for them? You may not be able to take all of the photographs yourself, but you may be able to coach some of your peers on how to take their own photographs and how to do it really well. This was just in the New York Times this week, and it's hard for me to look at this one without getting a little bit emotional, but it's a really simple black and white photo essay about what classrooms look like still now, what they look like on the day that the students left school. So again, I have a folder of bookmarks on my computer. When I find a great photo essay, I bookmark it, and then I'm able to come back to it, use it as resources for my students. But I would encourage you to do the same. As you're looking at media, find great examples where the technology stretches just a little bit past what you might be able to do with your publication, and figure out how to do it, or use it as inspiration for pushing your own stuff to the next level. Okay. 4 purposes that you might consider for a photo essay: event coverage, profiles, lists and collections, and conceptual. And just watching my time, I'm going to show you one example of each. Oops. Okay. Beautiful story about Boston going dark. This is a student media piece from the BM Gator, which is at a high school in Boston. This is the platform that was used to create this is called Shorthand. There's a free version of it available, and those neat scroll and focusing effects that you see on the photographs going through here. The pandemic was an event. It's an event that has shaped all of our lives, and finding creative ways to narrate that story again becomes a primary historical document for us. Okay, profiles. So I'm actually going to show you 2 here because this is 2 different ways of looking at it. Profile, we think of a profile as being of a person, but a profile can also be of a team or a class or a club. It's a profile is what goes on a daily basis. It's not like a special novel event, but it's an inside look. You're taking somebody someplace where they might not otherwise be able to go. In this case, you're taking somebody inside the cafeteria kitchen at the school. And I love these little captions. Adding tomato slices, cafeteria worker Kelly Blakesley prepares the sandwiches in the deli bar early in the morning. Right. You wonder what this looks like for schools. And it's interesting looking at this now. Cafeterias are going to be very different this upcoming year. So this is a great story topic for this upcoming school year. What is different now in your school's cafeteria now that they're primarily producing only grab and go options, or things that students can take with them rather than sit and eat? Or what does the cafeteria staff have to do in order to keep that space safe for students? This almost already looks like history. Okay, and then this profile, this publication did a whole series of these. Coaching one student to walk through their day during the pandemic. Junior Carlos Mehigan. 12 p.m., he arrives at his father's chicken house and wears a mask to protect himself. 1 p.m., the job today was to remove all of the pads from the chicken nest so we can watch them another day, Mehigan said. Finished the movie. He took these pictures. The student who this story is about, he was using his own smartphone to document his day. But the quotes and the little bit of storytelling that came with this were coached by the student journalists who are involved with the publication. If you link to that story on their site, they did several of these. It was almost like you could see them like, what are we going to cover? Everybody's locked down. Everybody's at home. Okay, let's just see what one person's day looks like. And yeah, I can imagine it. Like, you can text the pictures to somebody and then they go up on the website the next day, just profiling these little snapshots of what our life looks like right now. That's a profile. Okay, lists and collections. Oh, wrong link. I got to fix that one. Let me get that one up here because it's a good one. Best spots for prom pictures. Tips for taking great prom pictures. And then a gallery of the best spots in the city to take your prom pictures. Look at this awkward shadow right there of the person taking the picture. Different locations. I would have never thought of this in a million years. And I thought this was a super creative list idea. You could, the best places to eat, the best places to get takeout, the best places to whatever, could all be list style photo essays on your site. And another quick example there, this one news side, because if you look on the date on it, it was like the last day before the school was likely closed. But March 14th is National Write Down Your Story Day. So they went with a whiteboard out into their hallways and they asked people to give them one sentence of their story. And then they also interviewed each one of those people for a little bit more context on what that one sentence means. So this is a collection. This is a collection of faces at your school, and they're little snapshots of what's important to them right now at this time. It's also a great yearbook feature to do something like this. And then finally, conceptual. This one choked me up a little bit. The New York Times did a story like this, a photo essay on when the last time that life felt normal. This story reached out to students in the school to supply a photograph of the last time that they can remember life seeming normal before the pandemic changed everything, and to give the publication a little quote about each one of these situations. And they're touching, they're moving, they involve a little bit of reporting too, but then they also present the student's quote in context. I feel like seeing the photo now, I find it hard to find the genuinity that we felt in the photo at the time, because now you just think about staying away from people and trying to prevent it from being sick. If anybody of you did this, the Google animal thing, I had a horse in my living room for a couple of days. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can reach out to me. The app is still up there. Basically, you could Google set up an app where you could put a huge animal anywhere into a photograph that you had or a photograph that you were going to take. So this student's last time she can remember something feeling normal was putting a giant goat in the front of her school. So they're funny, they're sweet, but this is a concept piece. This is somebody brainstormed this as a great idea and then put it together. And you can borrow ideas like this. Your school or your community story for something like this is going to be very different from Ella Stokes' story for something like this. So you can borrow ideas like this and make them work for your own community. Again, the website, the technology on the site here might look fancy, but it's really not. And then just one more, this is mostly for the teachers in the room. When you're thinking about conceptual pieces, the New York Times does this every year, but they just put out their question list. They put out student opinion questions on an ongoing basis throughout the whole school year. And then at the end of the year, they compile them in one place. So 177 questions. And when I look through this question list, honestly, just about every single one of these questions could turn into a photo essay if you wanted to build a conceptual piece around it. Where should we draw the line between community health and safety and individual liberty and privacy? Well, the photo essay for that is, what does it look like? What do those health checks in the morning look like for your school? Should gifted and talented education be eliminated? Maybe that's a slideshow of the gifted and talented classes and talking to some of the teachers or students who are involved. Should we feel guilty when we travel? I don't know about you, but my school district just told me that if I travel out of state by the time the school year starts, that I have to quarantine myself when I do that. So that question has a whole other weight to it. What about people who have canceled travel plans? I can imagine some great photographs for that. So this is a great place to look for inspiration and ideas for writing, but also creatively for photo essays and photo prompts. Okay, and my last 2 minutes here, I want to leave like 5 for questions. Just a couple of quick points about technology. Adobe Spark is a really great, easy way to build photo essay stories. I'll show you in my bookmarks here. If I can find it. Oh, darn it. I know I should have bookmarked it on the page. You're just gonna have to take my word for it that these are, Spark pages are super easy to build. They don't take any technology training whatsoever. You can actually build them from your smartphone. I have a couple of tutorials built on these that actually, thinking about it, I will link up to this page after I'm done blabbing on today. I'll link those up. You can do it, anybody can build a Spark page, and you get some pretty wonderful results out of them. Like I said, the smoke on the water page, this is all built on Adobe Spark. And it's, once you have the content, putting slideshows and visuals together like this in Spark is really easy and intuitive to do. Highly recommend it. It doesn't embed well into other media sites, but you can see how this publication did it. They just created a graphic and said, click here to read more, and it takes you to the Spark site. Shorthand is the platform that we saw for that Boston story. Again, there is a website. You can use this for free and then buy the more sophisticated version if you want. It's not quite as intuitive to use as Adobe Spark, but it can make some really beautiful results. It's got some neat stuff with the fades in and out and color work that you can do in Shorthand. It's a lot of fun. And just a quick tip. If you're going to publish images on a website, you want your website images to be effectively smaller than 300K, right? They get bigger than 300K. They get up into, if I take a picture on my smartphone, that picture is probably at least a meg. That means on a website, it's going to load slowly. The link that's here right now is a Chrome app that you can use to resize images. Super easy to use. You just drag and drop your image in. There's other sites too that can do this for you, that you can do it online. You don't need to have Photoshop or anything fancy to be able to size your images down now. But that's something that's a really important consideration. Sometimes when I'm looking at student news websites and I see the site is really slow or laggy, I'll right click on the image and I'll see that that image is a 3 meg picture. The website is struggling to load the picture. Screen resolution doesn't need to be nearly that big, and that's an important consideration if you're going to start to load a lot of photo albums online. Okay, I can't believe I can do that. I can just like talk for an hour about this stuff. I have to watch that, but Zoom is so strange because I can't see anybody's faces. I can't see if you're falling asleep. I can't see if you're bored. I can't even see if you have questions. So I want to leave the last 5 minutes here in case anybody does have questions or wants to chime in on something here. I'm happy to answer anything that I can.
I won't speak for everybody, but I know that that was not boring in the slightest. In fact, I think that was just a very poignant, very fascinating presentation. So Kate, I want to thank you first of all, because that was great. And Samantha's providing some claps for you, so awesome. Sandy did have a question, actually pretty great transition from your bit about photo resizing. Do you have a preference on portrait versus landscape?
Each have their own place. They really have their own place. It really depends on your purpose and your format. You know, if you're going into print, if you're going to do a print layout, let's get to a print layout here. You know, it's likely that you're going to need a little bit of both. You're going to need some pictures that are portrait and some pictures that are landscape and maybe even some pictures that are square. If you're going online, your pictures are going to go on a website. Most website pictures are, you see far fewer examples that are portrait for a website, just because our screens are in landscape view. So, you know, if you take a portrait shot and publish it on a website, there's all this space on either side. It's funny, it's kind of natural for us now to just take photos with our phones like this. It takes an extra thinking step to turn our phone to the side and shoot landscape. It's not quite intuitive. for people just to do this yet. But I would say if you're publishing online, you probably want to have a good batch of landscape shots. If you're publishing in print, you want to mix it up and have a mix of both. When I'm assigning photography assignments, I usually specify to my students. I'll say, okay, 20 photos, landscape, because I want them to be paying attention to how they shoot their photos. Sometimes I'll throw in a portrait in there, all right? 20 photos, portrait. They're like, wait, what? What are you asking for? Because I haven't done that in a while. But you basically, you want to be intentional about it, whatever it is that you do.
Awesome. Thank you. Folks, if there are no other questions, I just want to thank you all for being such a lovely audience and, like I said, joining us over these past 6 weeks. Thank you again to Kate for rounding out this series with a fantastic presentation. And I believe we're going to get this out to them. Oh, it's in the chat right there. Okay, and if not, if you can't get it from the chat, I think I'll go ahead and copy it and we'll get it out in an email as well to everybody.
Great, and I had 2 questions like privately in the chat about the handouts for Adobe Spark. Right after we're done here, I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna link those up down here. So look for them on the bottom of the page in the technology section. There's stuff that I created, so like Spark may have updated since this past spring, but they're pretty easy and they're in Google Docs. So if you decide that you want to make a copy for yourself and make changes to it, feel free to do that. You can use anything that I've got here.
Awesome. We thank you for sharing your wisdom. Okay, well, thank you, everybody. I hope that this has been an enlightening series for you. And again, we're so thankful that you were able to join us. So in the meantime, stay safe. And we hope that next summer we will be seeing y'all in person.
All right, me too.
All right, thanks, Kate. Bye, everybody.